Hello, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome to the Nintendo Select Podcast, a weekly Nintendo Switch retrospective and nostalgia podcast where we talk about our favorite Switch memories. Hosted by me, Tucker Hazel.
And me, Charlie Wackles.
This week, we are breaking tradition and charting uncharted territory. The topic of the day is totally unfiltered speculation and excitement about Nintendo's next system that, as of now, we know nothing about. And that's what makes this so much fun. We're really just going to be we're not tempering ourselves. We're not saying, oh, this is unrealistic. No, we're just going full on in it, and we're also going to be pulling in a lot of information from our community members. Friend Decoded is now the entire episode. We're not saving it all to the end. And Charlie, this was your idea. This was your sick and twisted original idea to break from the taking a look back at Switch, which is the purpose of this podcast, and frankly, get something that will generate a little bit more buzz about the podcast, because people are talking a lot about Nintendo's next system right now because, as you put it, this is kind of the calm before the storm.
Yeah, so there's nothing really like super concrete to go off of for this, but like I really just think that we are in a point in the Switch's lifespan. Obviously, it has been said by everyone and their mother, including people at Nintendo, which is rare, that the Switch is in the end of its life cycle. Yeah. We are within probably 1 year at the very most of having our hands on the Switch 2, right? And that means we're probably within 6 months, maybe, of seeing or hearing something about the Switch 2, right? Like whether it's, the introducing the Nintendo Switch that we got on October 16th, 2016.
Yeah.
Or wait, did I get the date wrong?
No, I don't know the exact date, but that's certainly the right year.
October 21st. I think it's October 21st, 2016. But yeah, whether it's going to be that or a full, January 15th presentation blowout that we got in 2017, where we're learning about the console, its controllers, its games, its launch lineup, third-party support. I really do think that we are kind of the window of opportunity to have a lot of silly, speculative, fun discussions is closing rapidly.
Absolutely.
And I want to take advantage of that window while we can. I think it's fun stuff to talk about. And yes, this is a Switch nostalgia podcast, but that doesn't mean that we can't,
It's our show and we make the rules, damn it. Yeah, I agree about the window closing, and what's interesting is that this is going to act as a time capsule. We know nothing about this next system. There have been a couple of rumors and general hardware thing. Maybe we heard about this from a production source or something, but nothing is concrete as of now. And we're not... As soon as this thing is revealed, as soon as we get very concrete information, as soon as launch lineups and dev things start getting leaked, we're never going to be able to go back to not knowing that. And so this is a time capsule here on the Backlog Banter channel for you and me for all the rest of the times, before we knew about it, what did we think the system was going to be? What the games, what did we think the hardware was going to be like? What did we think they were going to change for software level things? We're going through all of that. And I like that because it's a moment in time sort of thing. Going back and listening to pre-Switch announcement discussions of what is the launch lineup going to be like, who's working on what games. Of course, Switch was a lot more leaked. There were patents and hardware things and rumors coming out a lot more than they are for this system. But it's really fun to sort of look back at what people thought before they knew. And we are in the moment of total naivete. Total uninformed horse shit, pie in the sky. We're just going all for it. And where do you want to start with this conversation for the next system? There's a lot of avenues we can take.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about hardware.
Okay.
Right? What is your kind of dream? What is your vision? You are Shigeru Miyamoto.
Yeah.
You are Nintendo's creative fellow, right? What is your sketch of what Switch 2 looks like? What is your design? What is your ideal form factor?
Ideal is a big word here, because this is not going to happen, but I've been thinking a lot about it since you proposed this idea to me last week, and also since we had Logan Plant on last week. We were talking about some series, the ones that most interested me, series that hadn't made it Switch, and the ones that most interested me were the ones like Nintendogs and Art Academy and more Blue Ocean software that Nintendo did a lot for most of this century, but then they kind of started drying that up a little bit for the Switch generation, and I think that was mostly to distance themselves from the dominant culture and identity that they had built up. Wii, DS, Wii U, 3DS, all very similar. And so they kind of pushed away a lot of that. And I think it's time to re-embrace. And the reason I preface this before going into my hardware dreams, idealized dreams, is that I really would love the next Nintendo system to be a melding between what makes the Switch so special and what made previous systems so special. And so I'm talking, we're going to be recapturing the handheld aspect of DS and 3DS. I mentioned this in last week's episode, but I really hope that they bring back a touchscreen that is more stylus usable. I hope they include a stylus that like slots into the system somewhere, and so that allows you to bring back games, as we were mentioning, like Art Academy and Nintendogs and touchscreen based games, because the Switch is a handheld system, but it doesn't really lean into touchscreen game design because it's also a home console system, and I really hope that they are able to free themselves from having every game need
Joe Richards at Scrufftail on Twitter writes in friend coded, and they say, my biggest pipe dream is some kind of handheld peripheral or controller for the system that has a touchscreen. An exceptionally risky move. Do not market the system the same way they did for the Wii U, but it would bust down the doors for DS on NSO and those final Wii U ports. I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen the HD Zelda ports is because they were proud of being able to swap items on the fly. So that releasing without that was a no deal.
Yeah.
A gamepad accessory lets them have their cake and eat it too, and it is a nice full circle moment.
Yeah, and you're right to bring that in. I saw you like building up your energy, like I gotta get this out.
You gotta sprinkle it in,
No, it was good because Scruffy and I agree on this. But my idea is not a peripheral, but instead to expand the capability of the dock to make the dock basically what the Wii U was, in terms of the Switch itself can be taken out of the dock and had on your lap, and you have a touchscreen, and then the dock is showing another image, a mirrored image, whatever it is, up on the screen. And so the Switch would then, if the dock was capable of doing that, would become a Wii U.
So some kind of like a wireless tether situation.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that would allow what Scruffy was saying, DS games, you have your touchscreen, you have your bigger screen up there. It would allow Wii U ports that, and obviously new games to be designed with touchscreen in mind, with multi-screen gaming in mind, with asynchronous multiplayer in mind. And a lot of these things that are elements of Nintendo's previous systems were cool, but largely went underutilized because they wanted to still make sure that that the hardcore fan bases were satiated with games that weren't too gimmicky. But I think the Switch has lost a little bit of that gimmickiness, and I want it to be reintroduced, and so there'd be more variety of games that can be played on Nintendo's system.
And so you do think that this form factor is the best way to expand on some kind of like fun gimmickiness? Because I'm not asking this as like some kind of devil's advocate. I have no better answer, but I do think that it's interesting that like whether it's you or Scruffy or like any of the tons of YouTubers I watch. Oh, sorry.
Whoa, look at that.
Or any of the tons of YouTubers that I watch, this seems to be one of the biggest points of focus. And I do understand, because I think I like your point of view more than a lot of others, because a lot of them are looking back, right? A lot of them are saying, hey, I want to play these 5 games that I really like from the DS instead of I want to play these 20 games that could be really cool thanks to this new hardware. And I really like that perspective on it, because I'm not in the same place. I love the Wii U and everything.
Yeah. But
I would be curious to see what that like looks like. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm trying to think about Nintendo's current output and their current style, even in terms of game design.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how that would work. Do you think that they would ever do a thing where instead of maybe a peripheral, it's through a smartphone?
I mean, that would also be interesting. That's something we talk about. I think especially when we get to like social features for the system, the smartphone integration and other device integration, I think is maybe where that would be best. But I think hardware integration, I think Nintendo, for the most part, it seems like they like to keep things insular. The only real examples of them stretching out to smartphone are things like Let's Go having Pokemon Go integration, which is kind of its own thing. frankly, everybody went to Switch, which is basically Jackbox, and you can play with a smartphone, which might mean that they're doing some testing. Maybe that was a little of a testing ground for building up the technology of speaking between Nintendo's game design and smartphones. But I think that my mind goes towards the Switch's hardware being expanded to be that second screen, because ultimately that doesn't add anything that the Switch doesn't have in terms of a gimmick that takes away from the focus. The Switch itself would look the exact same. It would just be the fact that the dock could also do something that would then expand the bubble further for what would be possible. But honestly, if we're going completely balls to the wall, why not both? Have the Switch be able to be its second screen, and then other people can play other, use their phone as a controller, or have asynchronous multiplayer through smartphones or whatever. That would be the ultimate, every possibility.
And I think when discussing the idea of, because part of the draw and the appeal of the Switch in its form factor is how universal it is, how approachable and accessible, and how seamless everything is, right? Like that was, I remember the day I got the Switch, I was showing everybody, what it's like, how quick it is to I'm playing it. You know what I mean? You dock it and you undock it, and it's instant.
Yeah, and the experience is basically the same on both.
But the other side of that is, yes, the experience is basically the same on both. And so where I think that could get a little messy is if we start doing 2-screen compatibility on a handheld without a second screen that's built in. And that's why I think the smartphone route is the ideal answer for that, where
I see what you're saying.
Hey, we don't require it, but if you want to play a DS game in the most optimal way possible, you need to have this special thing. You slot your smartphone into the bottom. It connects to your Switch via Bluetooth or wireless or whatever, and that allows you to play DS games on the go without having to compromise only docked. Because I really do think that yes, there are some games that Nintendo's yes, this is best played docked, or you have to undock the Switch for this. But those games are incredibly few and far between. They are tech demos, and they are, generally speaking, not the games Nintendo is hey, this is our flagship title. Absolutely. Hey, we're really leaning into this, right? It's stuff like 1-2 Switch with the fucking baby that you shake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I don't know.
Yeah, because it would have to be pretty. It start interesting seams. You're talking about the seamlessness of the handheld and console versions of Switch or TV and tabletop TV and TV and handheld. Those are largely all the same experience. It really just depends on your preferred mode of handling the system. But yeah, if there's a Nintendo Land style thing or a Mario Party 10 style thing where one person has the gamepad and other people playing on the TV, then suddenly that mode can't be played in handheld mode by yourself, and so then could you connect multiple Switches? That's technically possible. You're right. It introduces a lot of questions, and that is why I preface all of this, and we preface this video by saying this is unlikely. This is a pie in the sky ridiculous nonsense. Yeah. My dream, though, is just to have it be the really all-encompassing Nintendo system. And as of now, and something you and I've talked about on multiple occasions on this podcast, is the Switch is an all-encompassing system, as much of an all-encompassing system as we've had, but it's not an all-encompassing system for Wii U ports that play like Wii U games and take advantage of gamepad software, and it's not encompassing
Wii
for
U,
DS,
and 3DS, and GameCube.
Yeah. True, yeah. But GameCube is obviously possible, and there certainly are GameCube games available.
That actually goes into something else that I personally want to see.
Let's shift gears.
Analog triggers.
Okay, sure.
I think analog triggers are such a simple, easy ask.
Yeah.
They change almost nothing in terms of the console's functionality. Yes, I understand that the Joy-Cons might be a little bit more difficult to engineer, but analog triggers are something that keep games from coming onto the Switch currently. They are not just old GameCube games, but current day games. There are plenty of games that need to be reworked in some way to make them work on Switch, right? A lot of racing games, for example, which I know that isn't exactly the number one thing that people want to play on Switch, is a simulation racing game. But I think if we're at a point where something as simple as your trigger hardware is gating off almost an entire genre, you should let's like, hey, let's bring in some analog sticks, or analog triggers, right? Like it seems like, if for me at least, it feels like a very simple normal ask, and then that also opens up full GameCube support,
Sure.
Melee HD, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what everybody wants. Melee HD.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
No, that's a great point. That is something that I think, if we're trying to rein things back to being a little bit more realistic, I think it's an absolutely very realistic ask, in that it doesn't change the form factor. It just expands the possibility of what is already there. It's going to have triggers. It just depends on what kind of triggers they choose to put on the system, and analog triggers just have more functionality and allow for a different variety of game design that digital triggers do not. And so I think if that's the area we want to talk about, things that can just be incorporated into the Switch's design without really changing much. I think that is a perfect one. I think that a microphone of some kind.
That might change the format of the Joy-Cons. I don't know the exact like hardware design of like how analog triggers are made, but I would have to imagine that would give the Joy-Cons a much thicker profile.
Mm-hmm.
Which could, I don't know. I'm not a hardware engineer.
My point is more that it would still look and feel like a Switch, in that there are Joy-Con on a screen. It's not like you have to make a totally different kind of controller to incorporate analog triggers. And the other thing, as I was mentioning, is it's something like a microphone that would allow to sort of recapture some of the game design that they used to do, where I know people don't love it, but speaking into the microphone or blowing into the microphone or whatever. And of course,
That's
what
fun.
it really is
It's
for
silly.
is voice chat in multiplayer games and things, and we'll get to social features. But I think that things like analog triggers and a microphone are like the first steps into just basically the DSi to DS is what I think people are like hoping for the next system, is same hardware base design, but just with more functionality. The camera, there's no camera on the Switch except for the IR stupid thing in the right Joy-Con. A camera would allow for different kinds of game design in the way that they did on DSi and 3DS. And adding a camera on the Switch doesn't take away from what the Switch looks like now. It just adds more functionality.
So you mentioned social features. Because we've seen a lot of interesting different angles and approaches for social features, even just last generation with the 3DS and the Wii U, in terms of, we saw Street Pass, we saw Miiverse, and before that, I think the Pokemon games were really interesting examples of Nintendo experimenting in smaller ways with social features, both locally and online. So what kind of are you hoping for in terms of social features? Are you wanting just a return of something? Are you wanting a combination of things? What is your ideal here?
The main social feature I want brought back is Street Pass, Spot Pass, the interactivity of having a profile and the Mii's that come associated with that.
Miles Obenza writes in.
Okay.
And just says Street Pass, baby.
Yes. Yeah, and obviously we know some people that are very passionate about Street Pass. Xeon Grassel of Nintendo Light fame,
friend of the show.
Friend of the show. He's gonna be a PAX roommate of the show. I'm rooming with him at PAX.
Ooh, hell yeah! I love Xeon.
And maybe we can convince him to come on the show just by me like whispering in his ear while he's sleeping. Like I can like subconsciously implant it in him.
I'm sure he'd be so game. He's awesome.
Yeah. I loved Street Pass. I think that's certainly the social feature on any system that I've engaged with the most. I don't necessarily think bringing back Street Pass means that they would also need to bring back Street Pass games, because that's a depth of software that was very cool, but is largely superfluous, and like it wouldn't feel like it's missing if they don't have it.
So that's something that I really wanted to talk about too. Is like the Switch's UI and system software is very, very sparse, and it's sparse because storage is so limited on that console. Do you see? You don't really want any kind of like system software along those lines at all? Because I feel like the most personality that the Switch software hardware situation has is when you press different buttons on the home, like unlock screen,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does like a funny noise.
Yeah. That is definitely. Obviously, I would like more than that. I think that, and I think that that's very possible. I think that having Switch stripped down in the way that it is was a design decision to make it be as focused on just games as possible. But my overarching theme for this, other than the pie in the sky dock handheld thing that I was proposing earlier, is that I really think that Nintendo is in a prime place to recapture the social and casual market with their next system, and that would feel more like an expansion in terms of functionality and really set itself apart from the Switch.
Absolutely.
In a way that isn't Wiimote or gamepad or dual screen gimmick. It's just just additive.
Hear me out.
Yeah. Oh,
Hear me out.
he's got it.
Nintendo makes a Strand type video game
Okay.
based on Street Pass style functionality. But the catch is that your Switch isn't the only thing that has Street Pass on it.
Okay.
Your phone does too.
Oh.
As long as you have your phone linked to your Nintendo account and you
Sure.
have all the permissions enabled and everything, you have all your shit linked to it, you have your phone and your Switch, everything's communicating. Your Switch might be with you, it might be at home docked. You run into someone on the street, sit next to someone on the bus. You get their Street Pass. Somehow that influences the gameplay of the game.
Yeah.
I think that the Street Pass stuff was really cute and fun, and it was like a nice little I went for like a walk to like go get, I don't know, what was I doing when the 3DS was a thing. I went to Walgreens to go buy like 6 cans of Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And some Doritos or whatever. I got some Street Pass. Oh, let me go like look at the like puzzle pieces or whatever that was called. That was cool, but I think having a big game, something
Sure.
where like that incorporates like, and I haven't played Death Stranding, so I could be getting some of this wrong. But the original pitch for what a Strand type video game is it is an inherently social genre, right? It's all about you are doing something that impacts another player's world. So like, let's say you have like, maybe it's an open world game a lot like Death Stranding, and you have like a bridge over a certain gap that you have set to like your favorite thing to like give to other people. Suddenly that gap appears in the world or in their world,
The bridge.
right? Things like that. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. That's a very, very simple example of what I'm talking about and what I mean.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not Nintendo. I'm not the one making games, so forgive me.
Yeah.
But like, seriously, I do think that something with those social elements, maybe even something that doesn't come baked in with the console, could be really, really cool to kind of incorporate that somehow.
Yeah. I think that you're starting to unlock some the social feature that I really think is going to be dominant on the next system, or I hope is that integration with smartphone stuff, because people bring their Switches with them, but you're right, if they have a much better Nintendo app on your phone. We currently have a Nintendo app, and they don't use
terrible.
it. It's pretty bad.
So bad.
But obviously
it's a piece of shit.
It's kind of a testing ground, and the framework is there to build upon, and obviously Spot Pass technology and NFC technology to where you're passing someone on the street, or we know that phones have NFC stuff because you can use Apple Pay and put it on someone else's phone and it pays them, and so the technology is all there, and the software is there in terms of the history of Nintendo, where Street Pass and Spot Pass were a thing on 3DS. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think connecting it to phones and having phones be the way where the social features are. And I think that there would also be maybe like 75% or 50% of that social features would also be built into the console, to where if there's messaging, if there's managing your friends list or whatever, obviously that would be on the system as well. But I think you're right. Expanding it to smartphones allows that to be a lot more dominant and also a lot easier. So then you don't have to bring your Switch with you. My mind doesn't go, because what you propose is Nintendo makes Death Stranding. Of course, that's not like the ultimate design, but I think that I think that there's the space for something like a very social Animal Crossing game, to where everyone's villager is associated with their phone or their account, and when you pass their villager, it shows up in this little. I don't know if you remember. God, what was it called? In Pokemon Sun and Moon, the online social thing was like this big like carnival ring where like there were like shops and people's trainers would be like walking by. I'm just imagining that, but for Animal Crossing, to where it's like everyone's villagers show up and you can go talk to them, and they each have an item that you can trade with, and then you could invite that villager to like come play a mini game with you or whatever it is. I think that is not only possible, I think that would be really goddamn cool.
Yeah, no, and you were kind of going in the same direction that I was. Like, imagine, I don't know, Pokemon Wood and Pokemon Rock come out in 2026 or whatever, and you're walking around and you're playing through the game and you have your team of 6 set on your street pass settings, and you pass someone on the bus, their team of 6 shows up in a certain place, their trainer shows up in a certain place. You can go up to talk to them in, like, I don't know, like the upstairs of a Pokemart or whatever, and you're like, hey, let's battle.
Yeah.
And you battle an AI trained off of their activity and their Pokemon using their team that they had set to currently set during their thing.
Yeah.
You could do that with Smash, Forget an amiibo. You have an amiibo of your most played character, or the equivalent of your most played character, trained with your data set to Street Pass, and then you pass someone on the street, you play against them in Smash, right? It's just like things like that, or like have a custom stage in Smash. That's right. I think there's a lot of potential here beyond what we saw on the 3DS, and I do think that part of that was just because of how young that whole idea was, and also just because of how relatively limited the 3DS was in a lot of ways in terms of like storage and capability.
Yeah,
where like you could easily store that information on your phone and just like have a certain amount of like maybe data in the game, save data set aside, and it expires after a certain amount of time. That kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like that could expand so much on what social features on a potential Switch 2 could be without necessarily reshaping the entire function of the console like they did on maybe the Wii U or the 3DS.
No, you're totally right. And where it becomes even more apparent that this is something that's possible for a future Nintendo is that at the time that Street Pass and Spot Pass were integrated into Nintendo 3DS hardware and software, that was before Nintendo was, or at least it was before they were willing, or at least before they had started to incorporate and experiment with smartphone technology. It would be 2 years later that, like, what? 3DS comes out 2011. It wasn't until 2016 that Pokemon Go comes out, and 2017 that Mario Run comes out. And so they weren't doing smartphone stuff when the 3DS was being designed, when that software was being designed. And so obviously they do that now. We have the Switch Parental Controls app. We have the Switch app on the phone. You can play Everybody Went to Switch, shout out to MC Horace, with smartphones. So they have the technology, and they're allowing themselves to interact with that other external hardware. And so I think it all just makes sense. And again, it's the social features of, I feel like Nintendo wants to be dominant in that you're using your Switch for things, not in the way that the Xbox One was dominant, but an omnipresent force in your life. They are now doing movies. They're doing a lot more. They're opening more stores. They have the theme park. They're trying to proliferate Nintendo into more parts of your life. And I think there's nothing more core to the modern lifestyle than social features on the phone, social media on the phone. And if they do a phone app that's ostensibly Miiverse, where you can see what your friends are up to, and you can check who you've spot passed, and you can see who's playing what, and it sends little funny notifications to your phone. And it just works. It just makes sense.
Xbox or PlayStation app at all?
I use the PlayStation app,
Those are both much more functional than the Switch app, I would say. Like, I use the Xbox app infrequently, but enough that, like, I don't know, I get notifications when someone I have set to a best friend is online, or I get a notification, or I can go in there and I can play games through xCloud, which is another thing I want to talk about later on, is streaming capabilities. And, actually, let's just talk about it now, because we've been talking a lot about smartphone capabilities and connectivity. Do you think that we see any kind of streaming beyond potentially using it or do you want to see streaming, and do you think we see it, and then do you think we see it beyond what we've already discussed as a potential second screen?
I've never tried streaming on my phone, and that technology is never something that I've really thought about doing. I have all my consoles, so I'm just, if I want to play a game, I'm gonna play it on my console. But sure. Yeah, I'd try it, and it would certainly expand the functionality. I think that unlike some of the things we've talked about today, it seems like that is something that Nintendo to this point has not experimented with, and so that would be totally fresh for them. That doesn't mean it's not possible, but it's just like it's less likely. But we're pie in the sky horse shit, totally unfettered here.
Yeah,
I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah, because I don't trust Nintendo's web infrastructure the way I trust fucking Microsoft's web infrastructure. But like, I don't know. I've played a decent chunk of Persona 5. I've played the first couple levels of Halo Combat Evolved. Mm-hmm. Like, I've played stuff on streaming. I've played like the entirety of Monster Train on streaming. It's a roguelike deck builder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But like I've played Slay the Spire on there too. It's a service that xCloud, at least I can't say the same for PlayStation because I haven't tried it.
Yeah.
But it's a service that has repeatedly proven me and a lot of other naysayers in my life wrong. Where I can, if I want to, like even on a console. The fact that I don't have to take up extra storage space to play a turn-based video game, let's say. Mm-hmm. Like again, I played most of Persona 5 when it was on Game Pass without having it on my console. Sure. And then when it left, I bought it and installed it.
Yeah.
But like that kind of feature, those kinds of features and connectivity, even just like a remote play thing for certain single screen games, let's say on a cell phone, do you want to see that? Is that something that you're even interested in?
Yeah, I that sounds really interesting. Well, here's the interesting part about the technology comparing PlayStation and Xbox investing in it versus Nintendo is the Switch is portable. And so if you want to play your games portably, you can play them on your Nintendo Switch and take your Nintendo Switch with you, or your Nintendo Switch 2.
Right.
And so I don't really know from their mindset what the benefit to also letting their games be played portably on another piece of hardware would. How would that really like improve
for
the
me
system?
it's more just the fact that the Switch in itself is not the most portable thing on the planet. Like I don't leave when I leave my house, I don't have my Switch with me unless I have a backpack, basically. Yeah. Like even like when I leave with like a little crossbody bag, I can't fit my Switch in there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just thinking about like ways that the Switch and the smartphone connectivity would be expanded. And that sounds like exactly the kind of thing that Nintendo would be like, oh, this is totally unnecessary and silly and defeats the purpose of our console. Let's do it because it's Nintendo.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I do agree with you. You are right. I don't know why like that didn't pop into my head, honestly, because it does seem very silly in retrospect. But I do think that kind of thing is going to be the future of video games,
that's definitely true. Yeah, and that seems like the area that will become more mainstream and more popular as the technology improves. But it also, to me, and I don't know if this is necessarily true in the modern area, but it feels like the kind of thing that like Nintendo will be the last one to the party on, and they already are.
Yes,
but, like exceptionally,
they're always the last one to the party with this kind of thing.
But where my mind went for playing Nintendo games on smartphones is this idea of a really cool Nintendo app on your phone. That I think that it could be interesting to have a version of like NES Online that is playable on an app on your phone. That if you pay for NSO, you can download the NES Online app and or not any of the systems, because the newer the system get, the more complicated it becomes to play a game on specifically mobile hardware. But imagine if you can just pop in to play Super Mario Bros. On your phone through the NES NSO app. I think that's possible.
Yeah, and I don't think I think that's a great idea, and I really don't think, as long as it's N64 or less powerful, I don't think that's a very difficult ask. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can run PS2 games on most flagship smartphones nowadays. And like that does get into the issue that I think Nintendo, where they do make a lot of like interesting and strange and unpredictable decisions. I think the one thing that Nintendo would not want to do is gate compatibility based on smartphone compatibility, right? Where like, let's say I have like Samsung's budget option from like 10 years ago or something like that, and I'm still holding on to it. Or whatever Samsung's like budget option is today, you know, something that's like you can get for like $100 versus you have like whatever the latest Fold phone is, or whatever their latest thing, their latest flagship is, there would be a difference in performance and connectivity to the point where I probably wouldn't be able to play anything beyond even an N64 might be pushing it, whereas you would be able to play probably up through like up to like maybe a GameCube or a PS2 and start until you would start to see some serious like stuttering and performance issues. I obviously don't know everything about it, but I do think that is a great idea of like having some kind of limited NSO virtual console style thing.
Exactly. And then that would also evolve over time, and the hardware would progress and the software would progress, and eventually I think more and more powerful things, especially if Nintendo does lean into what you were saying with like maybe they make their own sort of backbone style grip that is for Nintendo controllers and has the design of and the form factor of Joy-Con, and you can slide those onto your phone. Then that allows you to play Nintendo games in a way that makes them more happy, rather than, oh, we're just like kind of outsourcing this for someone to play on a totally unrelated piece of hardware.
Or again, going back to the dual screen thing, you slot it into your phone and your Switch, and then boom, you got a DS Virtual Console. I want to talk to you about hardware capability.
Okay.
Because this is probably the most hotly contested thing that I've seen discussed. I've seen people saying, "Oh, it's going to be just around a PS4 Pro."
Yeah.
I've seen people saying, "Oh, it's going to be a Steam Deck." I've seen people saying all manner of things.
Yeah.
So many different things about what this could potentially be. And I think one of the core arguments about that is DLSS. How do you feel about that? Is that something that you see Nintendo? I mean, we know it's going to be used in some way because of a bunch of leaks that have happened, but does DLSS make you hopeful in terms of having full parity with something like a PlayStation 5?
No.
Or not full parity, but parity to some degree.
No, because from what I know about DLSS, that's really just resolution upscaling. It's not
that's what I'm talking about. But it is upscaling for like visual stuff, not just. Doesn't it also have some lighting and like other very minor touch-ups in certain aspects?
Maybe, and probably, but the difference is I don't expect this to be as powerful as a Steam Deck, frankly. I mean, the Steam Deck is bulky. It is hot. It is loud. It is a portable PS4 Pro. I mean, the Steam Deck is certainly not a modern console in terms of its level of technology, but it's a lot closer than the Switch is. But I think that Nintendo doesn't care that much, and I think that
that's true.
The Steam Deck shows that this kind of technology is to that level is still needs a lot of work. Because the Steam Deck is 2.5 times as heavy as the Switch is, and it has these giant vents with this loud-ass fan in it that it allows you to run Death Stranding Director's Cut on your Steam Deck, as some people have played. I don't think that the next Nintendo system will be as powerful as that. I think the games, in terms of running complicated software with more polygons and bigger worlds and better draw distances, it will be better than the Switch. But I think that parity is something I've long left behind in my dreams, because I just don't think Nintendo cares. But I think the DLSS just means that what games can run will look better for resolution, less jaggy edges, better draw distances in terms of things looking higher, like higher fidelity in the background. But it will be more powerful than the Switch in terms of what it can run software-wise, but it's really the visuals that I think are going to have a big step up for DLSS.
Samson at SamsonXP on Twitter says that they want Nintendo to go back to targeting 60 FPS for every game like the Wii U era. And I think this is part of why I wanted to talk about graphics, visuals, performance, because I think 60 FPS is unarguably the most important aspect of that, or frame rate in general. Do you at least think that maybe it's not as powerful as the Steam Deck, but at least the Nintendo games are optimized well enough that they run at a consistent 60 frames per second, or no?
Well, definitely, because that's what DLSS helps to do, is to decrease the power that's going to running the game visually, so that it can then the power can be put into running the game at a frame rate wise, and then but it still looks just about as good because it's AI upsampling the image to a higher resolution. So absolutely, I think that is probably what they're targeting. I think that the game's looking better through DLSS, but running better because that's what the hardware is more capable of. I think that's the balance that will be struck. So yeah, I totally agree with that. What are your thoughts on the performance, on where you want it to land in terms of the spectrum of how powerful it is?
I'm of two minds on this. I think on one hand, like, it would be so cool to have, just the beefiest fucking thing.
Yeah.
You pick this thing up and it weighs 20 pounds and you're like, oh my God, Mario's mustache has 8 million hairs on it. And there's ray tracing in between every follicle and fiber of hair in his fucking mustache or whatever. But like, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I want greater parity. I don't want full parity.
Sure.
I think is where I'm at. And I think part of why I say that, and it's the same with the analog sticks, is that I just want more third-party games on Switch. Sure. Right now. For a while, I mean, the Switch was kind of my go-to place to play third-party games. Obviously, I knew, like, I had an Xbox One during the same period that I had my Switch, and like I still chose to play third-party games that were on both on Switch just because I could take it on the go. I could do more things with it. And I don't know. I think I'd rather return to using my Switch as my go-to third-party console over something like my Xbox, which is overwhelmingly what I use for my third-party games, that and my Steam Deck. But like I think returning to what made the original run or the initial years of the Switch so impressive and so great was the fact that it could do all this.
Sure.
And I think at least bringing it up to parity with a Steam Deck, if not a little bit higher, I think would be a missed opportunity. That is not me saying that I need it to be on par with the PS5, but I think also consistent with the rumors that we've heard, I do think that I would be surprised if it was not around, if not more powerful than a Steam Deck. Like I really do hope that Nintendo does put a greater focus on that.
Sure. I mean, that's certainly possible. I think that I'm doing what I said I shouldn't do at the beginning of this episode, is rein in my expectations, be realistic with these things. I apologize greatly for lying to you and for changing my mind. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate because, I want this system to be as powerful as it can be and be able to run as many games. Because, I would rather play any of these games on my Switch versus any other system. Outside of one other element that we'll get to later that forces me or makes me want to play games on another system. But for me, I think when I'm reading into the mind of where this next Nintendo system will go and where its place in the industry lies, is that the Nintendo's system currently, the Switch, is the most powerful, not the most powerful, the most popular system on the market. It is selling the most units consistently. And from what we know of what they're working for with the next system and the teams that are saying that they want to put games on Nintendo's hardware, is that Nintendo's next system is going to be a lot more what you're talking about, having access to those games. How good they look, how good they run is in question, and we will certainly need to see. But my thought process more goes towards, I think that everyone else will, like the Wii, be interested in scaling their games down to match Nintendo rather than hoping Nintendo bumps up to match them. I think we will still get a lot of the games. I think that it's just they're no one's going to argue they're not going to look as good. But yeah, putting aside the realism, I want a handheld PS5. I want a handheld PS5 Pro. I don't give a fuck. Like let's just go all out on it. But this the power thing is like the hardest thing that I have a hard time like hoping for, because I'm like, I feel like I know Nintendo too well. Like, we can talk about them doing something weird and having smartphone integration and having a second screen and having weird grips and all that stuff. That feels like Nintendo. But a Nintendo that's like, we are going to try to make the most powerful system we can, specifically to have third-party support, that doesn't feel like Nintendo.
No, and it's not just for third-party support, but because I think that like even something like load times on the Switch are
Oh my gosh, yeah,
noticeable, especially now that we're out of the PS4 and Xbox One generation pretty solidly. Like I don't play necessarily more games on those platforms than I do on my Switch unless it's a third-party situation. But like when I play like anything on my Xbox, and then I go any like big game on my Xbox, it'll load, like that on a Series S or X. And on Switch, I'm like waiting 5 minutes to boot up Tears of the Kingdom, that kind of thing. And it's just like, all right, guys, let's let's speed it up a little bit. And I think like honestly, load times are my biggest concern and complaint with what I want the Switch to improve on, but I also do want better visuals. And while we're on the discussion of hardware, and we did talk a little about controllers earlier, but Chris Edgerton at Wheels1993 on Twitter writes in and says that they want a sign that Nintendo in general gives a shit about disabled folks. Part of me is worried that they are straight up going to forget that they did remappable controls in the first place. And
on what system did they do that on?
Switch. You can fully remap.
Oh, sure. You're right. In the settings. My bad. I forgot about that. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a solid worry. I don't see why they would undo that. There's no benefit to not putting it in there. It's totally possible, and it would be really fucking annoying. But especially if it's just iterative software or hardware, they're not going to remove that probably.
Yeah. I brought that up partially because it is like very important to like hold Nintendo's feet to the fire in terms of accessibility, especially as Xbox and PlayStation are doing seemingly very well in those fields. And Nintendo's confirmed before that they have some kind of accessibility focused controller or device planned.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that. Okay, cool.
I could be wrong about that. Actually, let me fact check myself on that one because I'm almost 100% positive.
But I mean, that's the kind of thing where when we mention we want Nintendo to be pursuing accessibility and options and options for disabled players for their systems, I find it very hard to believe that they would remove remappable controls. But what it really would show that they're pushing for that is they need more options in their games specifically. I think that's the next frontier for them is Nintendo's games do not have the suite of accessibility options that any given Sony published or Microsoft published game is going to have. They are leading the industry with games like The Last of Us Part 2 and Forza Motorsport. These games have phenomenal accessibility suites, and Nintendo's, I mean, honestly, I can't think of any Nintendo game that has specifically great accessibility options within any given game. So that is really where I hope that they make a software level change, is game to game, making sure that there is more accessibility options. Because you could probably turn on subtitles, but they don't have different color balancing. They don't have different audio options. It's the game or the game with subtitles. That's what their approach to accessibility options in their games is currently.
The interesting thing about Nintendo's games, and don't take my word as gospel, but something that I've done, because one of the few times I've done proper video game journalist reporting was on a story about accessibility in VR.
Okay.
And I discussed what accessibility is and how it works with a lot of different people, a lot of different kinds of disabilities, and that kind of thing. Sorry, there's just a cop just straight up parked outside of my parents' place right now.
They don't like what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't like what they're saying either. But no, there is. I've seen discussion around it, and from certain members of the disabled gaming community about how Nintendo's accessibility differs in some ways from the suite of options that you see when you boot up something like The Last of Us Part 2, where Nintendo might not have options. The design of some of their games is inherently accessible from what I understand, according to some people. And again, this is not an across the board thing because there is no one solution for accessibility in game design because there are so many different kinds of disabilities. But like, I really do think that having, obviously having both is ideal, but it is really interesting to see how Nintendo's inherent design is more accessible compared to a lot of other styles of game design.
Yeah. I mean,
and
Nintendo
at least
does
from
have,
what I've read and heard,
especially with the fact that you can remap controls, Nintendo's games largely have simpler control schemes. So I think it's probably what you're referring to, is that with a stick and 2 buttons, which is the simplest control scheme that you can get, then you can play a solid chunk of Nintendo's library, which there are basically no games from especially PlayStation that are playable with that simple of a control scheme. And so it's a lot harder to then make sure that you have the touchpad and clicking in the sticks and all these, like, there's lots of different control things that go into playing any given major Sony release. And so you're right, Nintendo's games on a software level, in terms of how complicated the control schemes are, those are definitely more accessible. But so you're right, a middle ground is definitely what we would want them to pursue.
So I found what I was talking about in terms of accessibility on the Switch. So Nintendo did have an adaptive controller in the works.
But
according to an interview with Reggie in, I think, based on what I can tell, from 2022, he said that it was in the works and that he doesn't know what happened to it. But I do remember this being a thing. And, because of how secretive Nintendo is and the fact that Reggie, had a little bit of time before he left, it's very possible that this could be like introduced with Switch 2,
Maybe.
Because that's the thing, right? Is like, this is a very secretive company. They do not want anything coming out ever unless it's from the horse's mouth, including people who used to work there, even no matter how high up. And so I don't know. I remain hopeful that not only does Nintendo remain as accessible as it's been for disabled folks, but that they do continue to improve things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's use this opportunity to take a shift over to something another friend coded. A submission. This comes from Emmett Watkins Jr. at EJSponge61 on Twitter, who says, I want Nintendo to finally implement some kind of achievement system. No idea why they've held out for so long. Charlie, talk to me about trophies. Talk to me about Chivos.
I don't give a shit about achievements or trophies. I'm sorry, Emmett. No, I do understand that, and I do think that it is absurd that we don't have that yet, and especially as we're talking about ways that Nintendo can improve their social features. Let's say again we go back to this theoretical Street Pass game. Could an achievement affect how your character performs or what you have access to in designing this thing for the Street Pass game if it's about player expression and emerging gameplay, let's say? I really do think that achievements don't have to just be, hey, I have this gold trophy, I have this platinum trophy, I have this much gamer score. I think there could be so much more. And I think of all of the companies and platforms in gaming that could theoretically make them interesting to me.
Yeah.
Someone who, again, does not give a fuck about achievements. I would absolutely love to see Nintendo do something with it, because I think that Nintendo is the company that would make that interesting. What about you? Are you an achievement hunter? Do you have platinums?
I'm halfway. Well, no. Okay, I'm in. I like achievements a lot. I'm currently playing through Ghost of Tsushima, where I'm going to every single camp because I'm opening up the goddamn thing.
Jesus Christ!
Where it's like, okay, you need to make sure you hit all of the fox dens and all liberate. I
can't believe you started. I can't believe you were gonna say that you're kind of in on achievements, and you're doing that. That's wild, man.
Yeah, I'm not in so far that I have hundreds of platinums. This is something I do 4 times a year, maybe. I've already done it quite a few times this year. I platinumed Last Stop. I platinumed The Pathless. I platinumed Days Gone, and now I'm working on Ghost of Tsushima. That's all from this year. And then I did Spider-Man 2 and Alan Wake 2 last year.
Spider-Man.
Yeah. And I platinumed Astrobot Rescue Mission this year. I forgot about that. Which is very fun.
Hell yeah. That's like a 5-hour platinum, right?
No, it's like 15 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, that gameplay takes like 8 hours to beat. So you'd like double that. Yeah, no, definitely. It's 6 full worlds with like 6 levels each. It's a full thing. I'm gonna connect back everything. We're synthesizing. we're connecting it all back to this idea that you were talking about with the Street Pass thing, with integrating it to mobile design, into wanting better social features. I think that achievements are the part that I want most out of all of that, because I just imagine absolutely. I imagine my drive for enjoying and really investing myself in Nintendo games, which is I've 100%ed Super Mario Odyssey. I got all the Koroks in Breath of the Wild. I've completed the Pokedex in basically every single Pokemon game. I have that drive, but there's no external factor to completion of a Nintendo game, and that external factor is absolutely a major drive for me. It's why I like Ghost of Tsushima quite a bit. I do not love Ghost of Tsushima, but because I know how to get the platinum and I'm going from area to area, I'm just doing it anyway. And so I think that, again, synergizing all of this, bring back PlayStation Home, but for Nintendo. And so you've got a little room, sort of, what was the Mii game on the phone
Melee?
called? Miitomo. No,
Miitomo.
What the fuck?
I thought you were going to talk about like the trophy room for Melee.
No. But I mean, in a similar vein, yeah, like stitching all these things
together.
Because
I don't know what PlayStation Home is.
PlayStation Home was a social function on PS3 where you could make a little avatar, and when you earned trophies and you played games, you could walk around and build like a little house for yourself and put your trophies on shelves and buy like a couch. And of course, I don't think Nintendo would go all in on that, but if you meet Tomodachi Life / Miitomo halfway with social features, you can visit
live service house. Tomodachi Life, Tucker.
But this is
live service Tomodachi Life with Street Pass and social integration.
Yes, and achievement integration to where if you get the complete Pokedex in Pokemon Rock and Wood or whatever, then you can put a little Pokedex 100% gold thing on your shelf, and when your friend visits your little area that wouldn't be as high resolution or as big or as customizable as something like PlayStation Home was, but just a one-screen room where you can walk around a little bit and place a Mario rug on the ground and put the Froggy chair from Animal Crossing in the corner. They've done this different kind of technology. Miiverse, Spot Pass, Animal Crossing is exactly this. I think if you synergize all of that into something where
synergy,
it's baked into. You can check someone else's little area on your phone, or you can visit them on your Switch, and you can maybe play. Maybe that's also like integrated, where you can go to a little arcade cabinet and play Nintendo online games together. Like I think that would be. I mean, that's the real dream. Is like
this is you right now.
I'm flipping. I'm spicing. Oh my god! I just think that everything we've talked about today would come together, especially with the cherry on top that would be achievements. A way to show your friends what you've gotten. I think that's what you're talking about, Nintendo making it a little bit more interesting. PlayStation tried that with PlayStation Home, which didn't last very long. But if you're getting little fun Nintendo doodads from earning achievements, or we can even bring this down to things like, remember on 3DS Badge Arcade where you could customize your home screen or themes. If those kind of things are earnable through achievements,
you do a Tomodachi Life Animal Crossing style thing, with all of these elements in it. You've got your dailies, you've got your badge arcades, you've got all of these things coming together, and it's all wrapped into these social features. I mean, I think we've just painted a really good picture of what the ultimate Nintendo console kind of looks like, almost in a lot of ways, at least from a functionality standpoint, especially once you get into like, having it hit a benchmark of right around what a Steam Deck can do. And, you give it analog triggers, you give it, the what else did we talk about?
Microphone, camera, touch screen, stylus.
Yes, microphone is so important. But like, I think what we're talking about, even just from a software standpoint, I think for me would have me so excited. I love my Switch, and I'm so like this whole, obviously we have this whole like nostalgic discussion around it every week, but I don't love it the same way that I loved my 3DS. I love the games on the Switch. I don't necessarily, and I love the things I can do with the Switch, but I don't always love the things I do on the Switch itself the way I did with a 3DS or a Wii U. And I don't know. I think that's a great way to not just engage a fan base, but to engage a user base, right? To make gaming fun on a meta level that I don't think it is right now on the Switch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and this is, again, back to what I was saying earlier. I think that Nintendo wants to be ubiquitous lifestyle sort of thing, and hopefully this is another topic, but that means that the Switch has messaging, has a better friends list sort of thing, just like even those basic party system, basic social features that obviously are all sort of tied up in this, and taking some cues, the right cues from something like Xbox One, having apps available on it, I think would be nice, because a lot of people use their consoles for streaming, and especially because the Switch has a much bigger screen than most phones, and can be taken on the go. I would watch plenty of movies and stuff on. If I could open the Criterion app on my goddamn Nintendo system, I'd be watching shit on there every week.
Dude, I feel like Nintendo would only sign off on the Criterion app being on the Switch if they were like, yeah, we can let this happen, but you got to put the Mario movie in the Criterion collection.
Yeah,
the first Illumination movie in the Criterion collection.
First
Tucker.
of many.
This is a big deal. Don't laugh. This isn't a joke.
First of many, though. I'm hoping.
The first of many.
Illumination's
That's right.
The Grinch. How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
God.
Are there any other areas we want to delve into here?
I mean, we do have one that I think is worth talking about a little bit, maybe even in its own episode, because I think this was very focused on the console or handheld or whatever the hell we want to call it itself.
The system.
But the system. But at They Call Me Crisp, Postmaster General on Twitter writes in and says, I'd love to see some new IPs. I feel like a lot of the last few years has been focused on remakes or games getting a quote-unquote return to form. But I think this new system is a chance to look to the future and take things in new directions, which I do think is interesting, because to me, the Switch is so defined by new takes on older property, or not older, but like beloved, long-standing properties that have been established. Yeah, like, I don't know, this is the first 3D Zelda game that I actually like was interested in playing, because it wasn't fucking Ocarina of Time again. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. But like, I don't know. I do agree with that, and like it taps into something you've talked about a little bit with these Blue Ocean games that I do think we could see. You know, at Cody from Smallville at PBTHHHH says, "Yeah, we need Nintendo to get weird again. Let's get fucking silly. Let's have some fun, guys. This is gaming. Well, this isn't war. This isn't serious. This is fun, silly time."
I think that this is the real thing that would really make this a perfect harmony, because we've talked mostly about social features, hardware features, but software library is obviously the most important thing. You talk about, you love your Switch, but you love it because of the games, not because it does anything hardware-wise or
particularly interesting,
UI system level-wise that is particularly interesting.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. We know Nintendo can do a great library of games. The Switch has proven that time and time again, and I agree with what you're saying of, it seems like this generation, they were mostly focused on bringing back their established franchises, reinventing them in a way that gives them a new breath of life and brings them up to different levels of popularity, so that they can start doing things like movies and cross media and making theme parks and things like that. And I think
Andrew Orozco, Mr. RPG at Mooglinator says, oh wait, shit, wrong one. Fuck, sorry.
What are we doing?
Michael Ruiz at Michael J. Ruiz on Twitter says, give me Star Fox.
Oh, yeah.
And like, we talked about this last week, but yeah, like, again, giving new series a reason to be something interesting or new because of the hardware.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be Star Fox.
I mean, but there are three areas that I want them to continue in. It's not particularly realistic to hope for doing all of these in the best possible way, but we're doing it anyway here on this episode, which is continue forward. Number one, continue forward the series they've reinvented. Give us the next 3D Mario that feels like it's in the same vein of spirit and fun and whimsy and reinvention that Odyssey was. Give us the next Mario Kart. Continue these things forward. The next Animal Crossing will be equally as interesting. The next new 3D Kirby. Continue forward these things that they've established on Switch that are these reinventions. Number two, continue reinventing old series. We're seeing a number of them still even this year come back. Famicom Detective Club coming back, Endless Ocean coming back, Another Code coming back. Continue mining into that well. Revisit things like Star Fox. Revisit things like Kid Icarus and Punch-Out and F-Zero, as we've talked about, especially last week. But then the third one, as our friend who was talking about new IPs, Postmaster General, says, new IP is the third pillar of I do want new ideas from Nintendo. I would say that the area where I am most disappointed in the Switch's library is in the very small amount of major new IPs that they've tried. It has either been very small things or casual things, and there wasn't that middle ground that the 3DS had, where they were doing Box Boy and Pushmo and Dylan and these series that were new character IP Nintendo things that they each got 3-4 sequels on one system. I want that middle ground back that expands what Nintendo's universe is. Each of their individual IP, I think, were expanded to, I would say, some of their best degrees on this system, but we don't have a lot of new characters to call the Switch's own. And so I do hope that new IP, especially from Nintendo's internal studios, I hope that that's something that they're really thinking about. I think it's possible. I'm not getting my hopes too high up, but I really, really would love that.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, I don't think a Switch 2 that does the same strategy exactly that we've seen with Switch 1 in terms of just like, hey, let's just continue this and not get weird or interesting, is successful, really, or at least as successful. Because I don't know, part of the, I've said this like 2 or 3 times on this episode alone, but like the novelty of the Switch is no more.
Yeah.
Right. We have every hardware manufacturer in the PC world is trying to make their own version of the Nintendo Switch. They are doing it well. It is able to play these games portably. It is able to do it impressively, just like the Switch. They're able to plug into a TV just like the Switch. So what makes it interesting? We need something to talk about beyond, oh, this Zelda game is really good. Yeah, no shit, the last 2 were also excellent. Possibly the greatest games ever made. What else? What else is there aside from Mario, a Zelda, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with you and the responses we've been getting. I just want to see Nintendo get silly and weird.
I hope that by the end of the next generation, we have at least one new major IP that they're putting their effort into in the way that they did with something like Animal Crossing or Splatoon or obviously Mario and Zelda and these things. Because ARMS obviously was that for you and me and a Talking Sock and our friends that are really into that.
But not everybody.
But it's not the next big thing. And frankly, even though I would love to see a sequel to ARMS because I love that IP, I think there's more value in doing something entirely new. And putting your absolute all into it, again, like they did with Splatoon, spin-off, sequel, make a movie based on a new IP, like really from the ground up, modern Nintendo, theme park integration, movie integration, cross-media things. So maybe that's the one with the social functions. Maybe that's the one that ties everything together. New IP, I think. I want one major new IP that the main character or, an iconic character from that is on Nintendo's Nintendo of America banner alongside the Inkling and Mario and Link and Isabelle. I want a new pillar
Pikachu
of that. Well, Pikachu's not on the Nintendo of America banner because they only do their it's like internally developed IPs. It's Mario, Link, Isabelle, Pikmin, and Inkling, I think, are the things they have on there.
We need like evil Pikachu. We need like Pikachu.
Well, they can bring back Dawson.
Pikachu?
Gashin. Gashin is evil Dawson. Are you not familiar with Dawson the Giant?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, I know of it, but I wasn't I wasn't prepared
for a Dawson
to discuss.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. Well, Charlie, any other things we still need to read out, or are we wrapping up here?
No, I think we've hit everything that I saw on my end. Is there anything from the Discord that you feel
I think
we haven't really touched on?
I think there's one. We kind of got into a big conversation last night. I think it kind of made people forget that they were supposed to respond to this, which is fine.
Damn.
Let me see. Yeah, coming from Rickley here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Stop me if you want to go over any of these in specific. He just goes fucking all out, which is a good way to end this on because that's what this episode is for. He says... I'd love to see dual screens again as a hardware gimmick. There's one of them. Mario Galaxy 3, another third person 3D Metroid. Nintendo Land 2, open world 3D Mario, or Galaxy 3 as I mentioned, along with Ocarina of Time remake as launch titles. Wait, what? Wait, hold the goddamn phone. Okay, so we're going completely horseshit here. Mario Galaxy 3, 3D Metroid, Nintendo Land 2, Ocarina of Time remake. That 4 launch titles. Wrigley, I love you. you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
I'm gonna switch that up, and I'm gonna say a 2D Metroid made by Retro Studios instead of Mercury Steam instead of a 3D Metroid.
What I mean, sure, that'd be interesting.
Retro Studios, and their 2D platformers have shown that they're masters of environmental storytelling, which is what Metroid is all about at its core, and momentum, which they're also really good at. Yeah. So anyways, continue
again. Wrigley?
That's a hot take, by the way. I much prefer 2D Metroid to 3D Metroid of any kind.
I mean, so do I.
Vastly.
It's the only 3D Metroid I played I didn't like. But
well, Prime, I'm including in that too.
Well, I'm including Prime because that's the one game. I don't.
Oh, you didn't like Prime? Okay,
Prime at all.
We'll talk about that later. Keep going.
He continues and says, I'd also love to see Switch 2 embrace Wii-style experimentation and more arcadey kind of experiences a bit more. I don't want everything to be that, but I still want some modern Switch 2 games like that just because I think it'd be fun and a nice way to add more variety in between the more traditional single-player and online multiplayer experiences, and I think it's some more pick-up-and-play games like that done right could be bigger hits now than ever before, potentially. That might be one of the longest sentences I've ever read in my entire life. Final thing.
Some commas and periods in there.
He says not counting on it.
It's my job to say that. It's my job. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my job here. You know what I mean?
He says it'd be a dream come true if all this happened. I can't say I shared the same love or want for that because I don't like arcadey style game design. It's just not appealing to me. But if they make them, I'll play them and I'll try them, and I'm sure I'll enjoy them. So
you don't like arcade games. You don't like DLC.
Don't like.
But you do like ARMS.
Metroid Prime.
What else? And you don't like Metroid Prime. Yeah.
But I do like ARMS.
So ARMS is like the only game that you like.
Exactly, yes. Basically, that's what
Katamari.
That's what everyone's takeaway should be from this episode.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, any thoughts on any of that? Any of those specific games at the top or arcadey game design that you want to talk about?
Ocarina of Time remake is such a funny thing because I feel like I think that was an Andres Restart original, right? Like that was kind of his.
Maybe.
I thought he was kind of the originator of that, and like I don't fully disagree. Like there is enough indication that could be a thing that could happen. Personally, that wouldn't rustle my jimmies too much. No. Like I wouldn't get too excited about that. But like, you know what? Good for the people who would get excited about that. Mario Galaxy 3, on the other hand, the least flawed game I have ever played is Super Mario Galaxy 2. There's only one single flaw in that video game, and that is the fact that you cannot go from level to level seamlessly. That is the only issue with that video game. There is no bad level in that game. There is no bad star in that video game. The music is crazy. It controls as smooth as fucking butter. It's got the funny monkey. The hub world is amazing. Everything about that game is perfect. It is not my favorite game of all time, but when I think about the closest thing to a perfect video game, it is Mario Galaxy 2. And so when you tell me that there's a Mario Galaxy 3 happening, of course I'm going to get fucking excited about that. That is the thing that I want. Out of everything in this list, Mario Galaxy 3 is the thing I want the most.
Now hear me out, because I disagree. I think Galaxy 2 is okay. I think it's fine. I think I was very underwhelmed by it, though. But match the two together. Mario Galaxy 3 is a halfway between a Super Mario Odyssey and a Mario Galaxy in that there are
that's ideal,
big planets that you can go around that use the gravity mechanic, and you can look up and slingshot yourself to the next planet, seamlessly travel through it. You do the little thing where you like collect little star bits. But I think my biggest problem with Galaxy is those linear levels I just don't find interesting at all. But if it's maybe all right, it's a three-way mash. It's Odyssey, it's Galaxy/Galaxy 2, and it's Bowser's Fury. And that there's these big open planets that play with the gravity, but then they have, like Bowser Fury did, these little more handcrafted linear levels like placed into the environments. We just made the perfect video game.
This sounds like an episode in itself, honestly.
We invent our perfect 3D Mario, yeah.
Mario.
But ending on that note, I think we have covered all of our bases here for Nintendo Switch 2. We didn't really talk too much about the games that we want to see, a little bit at the end, but maybe we do that another time. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this time capsule of what the two of us, pie in the sky, hope that the next system is. I would say 15% of this will come true. I maybe that's a stretch. I think that we're setting ourselves up for disappointment.
I'm having a vision. Wait a minute.
Oh, it's coming.
It's so clear. It's so clear. Oh my God.
Charlie in the field.
Okay.
Reporting.
Nintendo announces. Oh my god. What? No, it can't be.
Oh my god.
ARMS 2 with analog triggers.
Oh.
And nothing else that we discussed in this episode. Why? No!
He has fallen on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, he's back. He's back.
That was intentional. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you guys next week.